I realized that I probably didn't have much of an introduction for you. Would you like to sort of introduce yourself? Because I'm guessing that although a lot of people are very familiar with you, I'm guessing there's also a lot of my people who watch my channel who are not familiar with you. So would you like to introduce yourself?
So my name's Steve. I've been a regular at Speaker's Corner for a very long time. In fact, I first went to Speaker's Corner in 2000. So I've been going there off and on for 25 years now, which makes me feel incredibly old. And I'm an atheist. I'm not a believer in any religious faith.
At the moment.
And certainly, some of my time, maybe much of my time at Speaker's Corner is spent having discussions or heckling or arguing with people of religious faith, but not just. And actually, I'm very interested and actually involved in politics as well. So I do try and encourage political conversations and discussions at Speaker's Corner as well as religion, because in my view, there is just a little bit too much religion at Speaker's Corner these days. So that's me. And in terms of politics, I'm kind of a very strong supporter of the Reform Party.
Nice. Yeah, you were a Reform candidate?
Yeah, right? So I did stand for them at the last general election and in the GLA, the London Assembly elections as well. So yeah, and actively support them now as well.
It's great to actually have you here to talk about this, because you probably would be one of the best people to ask. And I sort of, in the video I made, I kind of said, well, here's the footage I've seen. I can't really make heads or tails of what I'm seeing here, because the video kind of starts with some guy getting arrested, with one police officer, then another, and then they fall to the ground, and then there's all these other police officers. So it was kind of crazy watching it and trying to piece together what was going on.
Sure.
But I understand that you were actually there. In fact, I know you were there because I saw you on the video.
Yeah. You can see me in some of the videos, kind of. Yeah. So, and actually, because often when things kick off, you can easily miss it, can't you? But I luckily happened to be kind of in the right place at the right time.
Nice. So, I actually have some footage, because since then, other people have uploaded what they had on the day, and a lot of it is more complete. And I also happen to know some individuals in the video. Are you okay if we just watch that together? Or
yeah.
Yeah, it's about 10-ish minutes long. Right, let's give this a watch. Audio. I think this is just recording off someone's phone.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got Israeli flags, Palestinian flag, and someone has raised another flag, which is going to be interesting. So the Indian flag, the Israeli flag, and the Palestinian flag. I think I know who actually held this. I'm not sure if you're aware of who the person is who had this double flag going on. Do you know?
It's the tall Christian guy, I think, who has had a run-in or two with Bob.
Yes, his name is James.
James. Okay.
He is very anti-gay. Here we go. So the guy's just kind of following him.
Hey, don't play the victim now. Why are you starting trouble? Why are you starting trouble? They are Christians that did that. It was Christians that did that. Christians are fed up with this. They were Christian boys from Palestine that took the Israeli flag. Why don't you tell them that? What happened, brother? What happened? They were Christian Palestinians. They were Christian Palestinians that did that. Why don't you do that?
Just a second. Is that really someone saying it was Christian Palestinians?
I found that video and I watched it today earlier today myself, and I thought, really? I mean, when we come on to some of the later moments, I think probably there's clear clarification that suggests that is not the case, that they were Christian Palestinians.
Christian Palestinians. Oh man, you got to be careful of those Christian Palestinians.
I know.
They're everywhere.
Notoriously violent, aren't they?
Yeah, they took the Arab Islam terrorists. They took the flag of the. I'm just going to head down there, so I can't talk now. But I'm just head down.
Has to be Muslims again.
It's a part of their religion, that's why.
Yeah.
Obviously, they shouldn't take it. They did a false flag in Kashmir.
It's not a false flag. Kashmir is Indian. Kashmir is Indian. Kashmir.
Just to jump in here, yeah, this is I think this is actually James himself recording, as far as I can tell.
Okay.
Or at least it seems to be that way, because he's the guy that seems to be speaking, and he's inquiring. Well, not so much. Well, he will be inquiring about his flag, but he's talking more about Kashmir and how this is, in his view, appropriately owned by India, and this is a very controversial view, and it upsets a lot of Muslims who come from the Pakistani perspective that it is not,
Sure.
and this is causing a lot of stir up here. But let's keep playing.
Is Indian. Kashmir is Indian. Kashmir is Indian. In this battle between civilized behavior and barbarism, support India. Kashmir is Indian. Oh, wait a minute. What are you doing with the flag? Where'd you get that from? Where'd you get that from? Officers! Officers, come here! Police, come here! Police, come here! Go do what you like. Do what you like, but the IDF will. Police, come here! Police! 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 This is the man! Police, this is the man!
I just noticed as well, like, you know, you've got these two, and to be fair, they look quite young, at least from this footage anyway. But they've got this Israeli flag. They've obviously stolen it, and James is upset about that. And they've ripped it. They're spitting on it. They're trampling on it. James is calling for police, and there's a crowd of people around that could at least say something to these kids that are doing that. But there's just nothing. There's just no
violence.
Yeah, I mean, this is what always upsets me about this sort of thing is there are so many people who they would never themselves do this. Like, they would never themselves steal an Israeli flag or damage stuff or attack anyone.
Mm-hmm.
But if someone did, they will be perfectly happy to look the other way. And I always sort of think, that worries me. Like, what are you capable of if you're in the wrong circumstances and you happen to witness something, and instead of calling it out, you choose not to?
Yes.
Very concerning.
So I believe that torn flag was a stolen flag, and I believe it was stolen from another guy who I believe is another Christian guy that we will probably see in the later footage, because he had a second Israeli flag which was also stolen later on,
like a backup one.
Yes.
Okay, interesting. All right, let's continue.
Police! Police! Him! You disgusting people! Now go on, you're on camera. Him. Yeah, those two. Him. Yay! And this guy. Go on, go on. Oh yes, Pally running. Pally running. Pally running.
To be fair, I'm actually at this point pleasantly surprised there was an officer that did something.
Yes. So, and if I can clarify, where it says at the bottom there, 2 got away, that's not correct. So there was 2 of them with the torn flags, as I think we saw a second ago. Soon as this policeman arrived, and actually we'll see it in a second, they both, soon as they didn't, I don't think they initially realized it was the police, but the moment they did realize the police, they both scarpered. And they kind of split in opposite directions. One turned right onto the sort of the grass of Hyde Park. That one did get away because the police officer that kind of started to follow him rapidly gave up. However, the guy that turned to the left, this police officer in the cycling helmet managed to catch, which we'll see in a second.
Yeah, I'm props to him for doing that.
Yeah.
He went straight in, grabbed him, and yeah,
he did. He's I've had the pleasure of speaking to that police officer a number of times. He's a really nice guy, and he is a good cop as well. And clearly he was going to do his darndest to make sure that at least the one that he was going after didn't get away.
Yeah, that's good. It's good to see.
Him, yeah, boy. Where you going? Where you going? Hey. Where you going? Yeah, boy. That's a hate crime. Hey.
So, real quick.
That's a hate crime. That's a hate crime. So
that's a hate crime. Yeah.
Apparently arresting or holding a criminal is now a hate crime.
But you know what, though? I'm willing to bet the officer's thinking, is it? I don't know. Like, if I was a police officer, anytime I did anything proactive that happened to involve someone of a different ethnicity, I would genuinely be concerned.
Well,
is this technically a hate crime? Or
wow, and I mean, just going off on a tangent for a moment, I don't know if you've heard the story about he was the London head of the Police Officers Federation, which is kind of their trade union. They're not actually allowed a proper trade union, but it's kind of their sort of representative body, was suspended from his police federation job because he gave an interview in which he said police officers across London are genuinely paranoid about arresting people, people of colour, people who are not white. He's now proceeded to a disciplinary hearing, and he's been dismissed and told that he can never hold that post again, because simply all he did was say in a media interview what his officers are telling him, that they're really, really worried about this thing. So it's a genuine fear.
Gosh, and just think as well, if you gave that kind of feedback, maybe some people said it anonymously and they got it and they were like, wow, there's so many of our staff that have this really anxious feeling about doing their job. What you've basically done is send the message out that you can never say that. So everyone who gave that feedback, maybe it was anonymous or however they did it, and is now thinking, why should I even say this? Because I said it once, and the guy who then voiced it ended up losing his job or ended up losing his position.
Yeah.
So it's very clear you don't want me to say this.
Yeah.
Oh, terrible stuff. Oh, yeah, I was about to say, there is a woman there who seems to get a few punches in, which I think is...
So I don't know what her name is, but I know her and I've seen her at the corner. And again, I've spoken to her.
I think we probably both know who this is.
But I think what she's doing here, though, and I hope I'm sure she'll be fine. But as we can see in this video and in all the other videos, this individual, he tried to run away from the police, but then when they caught him, he completely resisted arrest. He was fighting back, which is why more police officers had to come in. He had to be taken to the ground because he was resisting their arrest. I think clearly she saw what was happening, and she probably feared that, maybe he might get away from the police. So to me, it's pretty clear she was assisting the police in assisting their arrest and making sure that they held him by what she was doing.
Yeah, and to be fair, I think it might have been a sort of like caught up in the moment. What do I do to help?
Yeah,
so exactly. It's just like, I don't know. I'll just prod you, whack you a few times. And
but down. I think the point being her behaviour was to help the police. It wasn't like to antagonistically punish the person that was being arrested. It was to help the police. I think that's obvious.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I do indeed think that's fair. But it's just something interesting I saw when watching the video. But let's continue.
That's what you get, boy. That's what you get, boy. Yes. That's what you get, boy. And your boy's coming back as well. Hey, don't touch it. Don't touch it. Let the police do their job. Let the police do their job. Let the police do their job. I video this guy. How dare you, officer?
So that guy, I think I pointed him out in my original video. The guy who sort of comes in and he sort of like leans forward, and he's obviously saying stuff and trying to get involved. And then I think it shows you coming in and saying, hey, just let the police do their job.
Yes.
Don't get involved. Because he's obviously trying to influence something that's going on
yes,
here.
because at that point there are 3 officers trying to restrain this individual and get him in handcuffs, but he was squirming and screaming like a girl, frankly. And there were just 3 of them, and as this was going on, the crowd of people around was getting bigger and bigger, and particularly, I will say, young Muslims who clearly were very, very unhappy with this individual being restrained and being arrested. And they were screaming and shouting and cajoling the police and physically pushing and shoving the police. And, I felt a few kicks from that hit me from behind. So, they were doing their best to get that guy free and away from the police. So it certainly wasn't in any way excessive policing.
Oh, absolutely not. Yeah, I mean, it seems completely fair from this point, from how I'm watching the footage. I was surprised at how many police were just present there.
Wow. So I was going to talk about this. So there was, within kind of the media area of Speaker's Corner, there was pretty much, I mean, we do get more police officers there quite often now. Not every single week, but more weeks than not, we do get a greater police presence. There's often at least a couple of police vehicles parked, up at the end of Speaker's Corner. And we quite often have 6, 7, 8 police officers walking around on foot. That has become very normal, probably because of the increase in violence and trouble there. However, we had a lot more than that arrived during this incident, and I wanted to explain. I think I know why, and now I hadn't had confirmation of this from the police, so it is only me surmising. But last Sunday was the last Sunday of the month, and I think a few people have made this comment in the comments under your previous video that you might have seen. The last Sunday of every month, Kelly J. Keane and Let Women Speak gather. They have their main gathering across the grass. It's called the Reformers Tree, across the grass over Hyde Park. Last week, I don't know if you and your viewers are aware, we had the Supreme Court ruling about the definition of a woman being, based on biological sex.
Yes.
We had, and I saw these when I arrived at Hyde Park, along kind of the northern road of Hyde Park, there was about 4 police vans all parked up, all full with police officers. And they were there. I certainly know those police vans were there because they feared that Kelly J. Keane's gathering might get a big reaction from the trans movement. So that's why there were a lot of police numbers very close to Speaker's Corner. So, and actually I know that bit definitively because the police did tell me earlier on in the day that, they had numbers just in case there was a trans opposition to Kelly J. Keane, which actually didn't turn out to happen. So that was a good thing. But what I'm assuming is that, they were still present sitting in their vans, which meant they were so readily available to quickly come in, when these arrests were being made and were being, resisted and the mob was screaming, etc., etc. And now, so I think that was just fortuitous that those higher numbers were present. It wasn't for any other protest or any other sort of intelligence of trouble, I don't believe. But I think it was very lucky that they were there because we saw the kind of the trouble and the mob that ensued. If they hadn't been there, the smaller number of 6, 7, 8 Royal Parks police, I think would have really, really struggled with that mob.
Yeah,
so I think
absolutely.
It was really lucky that the other numbers were there to come in and basically to control the crowd so the police could make their arrests and do what they needed to do.
Yeah, I think that's the bigger issue, right? You have these 2 or however many there ultimately were Muslim lads. And I think it's fair to say Muslim because this is obviously to do with Israel, Palestine, and now India and Pakistan over Kashmir. So that to me is enough to say, okay, there's a religious element in here somewhere. So you have these agitators. Dealing with them is one thing, but dealing with the effect that the crowd has in response to it is a totally different. I think we'll probably see in this video, but the crowd just more and more people come, and it's quite clear that they're not particularly interested in helping the police. A lot of them, in fact,
No,
some of
definitely
them,
not. And in fact, at quite
Yeah.
a few points, I think even at this first arrest point, we heard Takfir, Allahu Akbar,
yes,
repeatedly shouted loudly by the crowd as the police were trying to make their arrests. So that's what I was, referring to earlier. That clearly confirms that both the crowd, the mob that were unhappy with the arrests were Muslim, and therefore clearly the individuals being arrested were Muslim as well.
Yeah, I think that's completely fair to say. Yeah, like I completely agree. It's great that the police actually were there, even if it wasn't sort of intentional. It was sort of a totally different thing. Which I've been to see Let Women Speak. I always forget the woman's name, but you said it earlier.
Kelly J. Keane.
Kelly J. Keane. I've seen her speak, seen some of her content online. And I actually went there many months ago, actually last year at some point, to see what it was like by Reformers Tree, seeing their presentation. They kind of just give a talk with a crowd around them. And it was one of the times when they actually did have, I guess you'd call it trans activists who were very against this, right? And you know what? I've just been completely honest with you. I feel actually safer with Muslims at Speaker's Corner, the main part, me going around there saying, hey, Islam is false, Muhammad is a false prophet. I would feel safer in their presence than I would with many of those trans activists. Because, and it's for a very interesting reason. I do think that among the trans activist movement, there are people of whom just, how do I put this tactfully? They are not in the best state of mind. And I saw that. And I tried to have a civil conversation with someone who I honestly thought was on the verge of crying. And I said nothing offensive. I didn't even make it clear I was not in the opinion of transgenderism. I didn't make my opinion known. But this person was, I could see in their eyes, was so just anxious to talk to me, a stranger. And in the end, they had someone come up who was wearing a mask, looked like they could have been an average member of Antifa, sorry. And they came and dragged her away to be like, don't talk to this man. You don't know who this man is.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. No, I mean, Kelly J. Keane and Let Women Speak have been meeting at the Reformers Tree probably for a couple of years now, once a month, as I say. And certainly recently, they don't seem to attract any opposition. But like you, I have been there when there has been an opposition. And the sorts of people that attend in that opposition, they either seem of not sound mind or are, literally extremists, far left Antifa extremists, covered in black, covering their faces, refusing to have dialogue with anyone, and anyone that doesn't wholeheartedly support them is a far right fascist. Utter nonsense. Which is bizarre, because if you look at the group of predominantly women who go to Let Women Speak, a lot of them are lesbians. A lot of them are traditional classical feminists. A lot of them are traditional left-wing people politically. They're probably people that would never, ever vote Tory in their life. So for those people, the far left traditional feminists, to be called far right fascists is somewhat bizarre.
We've reached a sort of point in political history where people who were probably prominent in the 90s are now basically seen as far right extremists. Like a normal left-wing view in the 90s is now just not tolerated at all. And that's why you have the Harry Potter lady, whose name
J.K.
is
Rowling.
J.K. Rowling. You have these people that, even Bill Maher, I think his name is.
Yes.
You have these people that, in all honesty, to me, they're incredibly milquetoast. Like, they're not expressing anything radical, or it really is just, you go back to the 90s, their view would have been perfectly fine then. But now, somehow, it's become, if you're not fully on board with transgenderism, you're basically in league with the devil at this point.
Quite. And and again, Kelly J and other women that go to her events, have been violently attacked. These are not peaceable people. They want to go and punch a Nazi who they consider as a Nazi. They're not pleasant people. One month they actually came into kind of, you know, the main center of Speaker's Corner. And, you know, they were sticking umbrellas in people's faces. They were surrounding people. You know, it was very, very unpleasant behavior, which is why I think, you know, the police were there in such numbers, because they know what that group can be like if they choose to come and oppose the Let Women Speak. They can be very violent people. So therefore, you know, large numbers of police were needed in case they showed.
Yeah, I think it makes perfect sense. I have all sorts of funny stories with I got on a little tangent. Are you familiar with Lotus Eaters?
Yeah.
Podcast. Yeah. So I went to a meeting basically where they were and people who enjoy their content would be, and you know, it was at a pub, and I had this guy came over to us and he introduced himself as a former member of Antifa.
Yeah.
And of course I was like, whoa, what? Like, you know, that sounds a bit strange. And he just came and explained how he used to be a very different person. He used to be very far left. He used to go to all the anti-fascist things, and he was one of these guys that attended like a Jacob Rees-Mogg, like they went there to disrupt and do all this stuff, and
right.
And he basically said, in the end, I realized there aren't actually that many Nazis anymore. Like, there just isn't. He said he realized, hang on a second, we're going to these events, you know, to stop these Nazis or whatever, and it's basically like 6 skinhead guys who are in their 50s or something, or 40s or 50s, and no one listens to them, no one knows what they're saying, and we turn up in significant numbers, and it's like, well, it doesn't really seem like there's a problem with Nazism anymore. And he started to think this way.
But, you know, the days of, you know, like in the 70s and 80s when the National Front was big, and I think, you know, they could get big numbers out on demos and stuff, and even the BNP in the 80s and 90s, and you know, they don't exist anymore, or whatever's left of them, as you say, is just like a tiny handful of middle-aged guys who are too old to do anything. So exactly, the real far right is very, very, very small.
Here's a quick thing. I wonder if you'll agree with me on this. I like to think that the best way of describing the far right is actually under Islamic terms. So right. I would say it's a far right belief to believe that women ought to be veiled. You see, I say it's a far right belief to believe that homosexuals should be killed, that apostates should be killed. You know, I think in my mind, that's actually a very clear definition of what an extreme far right belief is. But yeah. Anyways, let's continue the video.
So back to the video. So remembering two people had the stolen flag. They were tearing it up. The police arrived. They scarpered. One got away. The police are now retaining and trying to arrest and trying to handcuff one of these two individuals, whilst the crowd is getting bigger, getting louder, getting braver. But luckily, more police come in.
Yep. Let's watch.
All of you step back, please. You can see that we're dealing with something here. All of you step back, okay? Step back. Very good. You want to be arrested? What are you going to do? Steve.
So just to ask here, from what I understand, like I've never been forced to put handcuffs on, but I assume that if you basically just don't comply and you don't move your arms in the right position to be handcuffed, then they can't handcuff you, right? That's what I would assume.
Yeah, so I mean, you see other videos of this. You know, if you're calm and you know, if you're being arrested and you're calm and compliant, you know, it just takes a split second for them to get the cuffs on and away you go. When people fight and resist, it becomes much more challenging for the police to get the cuffs on, because obviously, you know, the cuffs aren't very long between the two cuffs, so your wrists need to be quite close together. So if that person is resisting and squirming and rolling around on the floor, you know, it takes a lot of restraint to get the person still, to get their wrists close enough to put the cuffs on.
Yeah.
But can I just say at this point, because I think there might have been another video that showed it a bit more clearly, but what happened a second ago is that when I was saying, I'd said to these yobs, stand back, let the police do their job, I then became the attention for some of them, and they started getting aggressive with me, and actually started threatening me with violence. And my response was to these two in particular who were doing that. I said, are you literally threatening me with violence right in front of police officers? Now, obviously, the police officers were generally a little bit busy at that moment. But I said to them, are you that? But, you know, police officers have their webcam, have their, you know, cameras going on their uniforms. So they can still pick stuff up. I said, you know, are you that intelligent that you think it's a sensible thing to threaten me right in front of police officers when all I'm doing is let the police do their job? But you know, that demonstrated to me, you know, the anger and the venom that you know, they were outraged that these police officers were arresting one of their gang.
Well, it also shows that they had, in their mind, there's an in-group, out-group, right? They have their side and there's the opposing side, and you've just identified yourself as the opposing side that's actively trying to stop one of their guys, you know, by saying, look, let the police do the job. Even though it's as simple as that, it's enough for them to get upset about.
You were thinking that, like, when you were flagging the flag, right? Okay, guys, can you please step back? I've asked you all to step back. Please step back. I've got the head. Stop resisting.
That's why I heard him say, I've got the head.
I've got the head. I've got control of the head.
There's the Allahu Akbars. There was the Allahu Akbars, the takfirs.
I could hear him say, at least it sounded like he was saying wallahi to me. So like, kind of like by Allah, you know. So again, religious connotations there.
Yeah.
Look at that. Like, they're clearly that, just the way they're behaving there, just that few seconds.
Yeah.
I don't know, like,
and obviously by that moment, we had the 3 police officers try and arrest him. I think then 2 more, and I think they were all Royal Parks. But then once they got him cuffed, the additional police numbers have arrived, which we now see in this bit of the shot. And clearly, you know, the officers that are arresting him are now trying to get him away to obviously take him off to a van. That's when the crowd are around. And if the higher numbers of police hadn't arrived by that point, I think it would have been quite difficult for those officers to have got him out.
Absolutely, yeah. You see, the thing is, I do believe, whether I could be wrong, but I think that if there's enough pressure and the situation is, you know, it just isn't in the police officers' favor. You know, there's too many of them. They're outnumbered. It doesn't seem practical anymore to deal with the situation. They just say, actually, you know what? We're going to step back, change of plans. Actually, we'll let you go this time, and we'll regroup and deal with it in some other way later.
Exactly. And you know, we've both seen that happen time and time again. You know, whether it's, and you know, I suppose if we want to be kind to the police, we will kind of say, well, you know, they don't have any other options. You know, if they don't have the resources there to deal with the numbers, there's literally nothing else they can do. You know, you can't. 6 officers can't arrest a crowd of yobs of 50 people. If we want to be less kind, we'd say, well, they just go for the path of least resistance and even sometimes take the victim out. Now, of course, we saw that many times with Hatun, when she was the one carted out the park, even when actually it was the crowd of yobs of 50, 100, however many, who were who were committing the crime, not Hatun. So we know they do that. And the other thing tactic the police will use is by not making any arrests, and they'll just ask the person to leave the park, because it's easier to ask the person to leave the park than call in a van and get the numbers to properly arrest them and cuff them like they're doing here.
Yeah. I mean, when we saw Hatun being arrested, at least on one occasion, I remember seeing in the footage there were people that were throwing things at her as she's being escorted by police into the van, and it's, you're being asked to believe that there's some 5'6" Turkish lady, who's supposedly some kind of threat to this crowd of 20, 30, however many people that are around, and they're throwing stuff and she's in cuffs. I mean, like, the optics of it were terrible for the police, because they clearly got that wrong. But I understand what you mean, though. Like, there's a practical element. If they don't have the resources to deal with it, what else can they do? I don't know.
But then, when I'm being sympathetic and thinking that kind of route, I think back to lockdown, when all of a sudden the police seem to be able to produce massive police numbers to control and manage people and crowds of people during lockdown. So that kind of tells me, well, actually, is it more, and obviously, it's not the frontline officers' fault, it's the seniors, it's the management, that when they choose to, they can get the resources where they need to be or where they want them to be. So therefore, is this just a more senior echelons of the police deciding what they're going to police and what they're not going to police?
It definitely seems to give me those vibes. I mean, if I, putting myself in their shoes, if I was a senior police officer making calls about where you patrol and where you put resources, Speaker's Corner would be like one of the top ones, because that's it's an area with historic precedents of free speech, where everyone goes to protest. Why would that not be? You'd have like Whitehall, you'd have Speaker's Corner.
I know. I'll mention now, I was going to bring this up, but this is probably a good moment to bring it up. So, as you probably know, Chris, that we have, so Speaker's Corner, part of Hyde Park. Hyde Park is part of the Royal Park. So all the parks most of the parks across London are managed and what have you by the Royal Parks. The Parks has always had its separate unit of police called the Royal Parks Police. Once upon a time, they were wholly independent and separate to the Metropolitan Police. Not intermingled at all. Much like the City of London Police is still separate to the Metropolitan Police. However, the Royal Parks Police was brought into the Metropolitan Police a few years ago. But now I am told that the Royal Parks Police is going to be completely decommissioned, got rid of. There is not, I think we're waiting to know the final announcement and the specific date for that to happen. But the Royal Parks Police, so and how you know whether it's Royal Parks Police is that their numbers on their shoulders begin with RO. So any police officer with RO on their shoulder, they're Royal Parks Police. So it's not just Speaker's Corner, they cover Richmond Park, Regent's Park, etc., etc. But the point is, so they're about to be disbanded as part of Sadiq Khan's money-saving efforts. So Sadiq Khan is removing hundreds and hundreds of police officer posts from the Metropolitan Police. So they're going to be smaller resourced, and he's completely disbanding and getting rid of the Royal Parks Police. Now, I think this has real significance to Speaker's Corner. Firstly, once the Royal Parks Police have been disbanded, will we have any police officers present at Speaker's Corner as a matter of course? So that's the first concern. So we may just see a reduction of police presence at Speaker's Corner. And the second point is the police that we may have at Speaker's Corner if they're not Royal Parks Police, they won't be so aware and understand the kind of the nature of Speaker's Corner and the importance of free speech and the traditions and you know, the way it is. And that's not going to be helpful either, because there'll be, you know, police officers coming in from Ealing or from Hackney or whatever that may have never been to Speaker's Corner before, won't understand the intricacies of it and kind of how things are tolerated or not tolerated at Speaker's Corner. So I personally think that when Royal Parks Police are disbanded, it's not going to result in a positive outcome for Speaker's Corner.
Yeah, the things that you pointed out there are the same thoughts that I have when I hear that. I didn't know that was happening. That's really interesting to hear. I mean, I sometimes wonder if one day there'll be someone from the Met Police that goes there and tries to enforce it in a somewhat similar way to the normal places outside of Speaker's Corner.
Yeah.
And they would hear something and be like, well, that's a hate crime. And would just basically just start taking random people from Speaker's Corner and be like, well, you know, this guy, he said this. Yeah, he made some negative comments about LGBT. He said something about transgenderism. So off he goes. And I don't know. I feel that could be a real thing that happens one day.
Yeah, well, so yes, you're right. So the sort of tighter policing of hate crimes and of, what do they call them? Hate non-crimes, which is an oxymoron in itself, isn't it? But it still exists, and some police forces still police those very actively.
Knocking on your door, asking about Twitter posts.
Exactly.
Did you see that video of a police officer? I'm not sure where in England it was, but he goes up to someone and he says, "You ask someone to speak English," and he says in a very particular tone of voice, which is very like accusatory. He says, "What did you mean by that exactly?" He says what's that about? As if we already know you've done something bad by saying that, so just own up to it.
So that, I think that I agree with you. That is one risk, that things could be, you know, things that could be policed that may not be. But also on the other perspective, I can imagine it could be policed in much more of a kind of a public order way, which could be too heavy-handed as well. Because I think, you know, a good policing at Speaker's Corner, it does deal with the troublemakers and the criminals, but also it knows when to step back and say, no, that's just healthy debate. It might be sounding a bit noisy and a bit aggressive, but actually that's fine. That's what happens. You know, if they could come in too heavily handed as well. So I could see it going both ways, to be honest. Wrongly.
Yeah, it's probably some like worst of both worlds, where it's heavily handed and just under resourced anyway. So when you do have the police there, not a good thing. But fingers crossed, that's not what actually happens, and hopefully it isn't as bad as we think. But you know, time will tell.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're dealing with it. We just arrived. We're dealing with it. Stand back.
Why was he on the floor? Because he was violent. That's what you deserve. How dare you?
You see this thing so often, don't you? Observers who have no clue what's going on, seeing police officers trying to arrest someone on the floor and start screaming, "Oh, it's police violence, etc., etc." No, it's a thug who is failing to comply with police officers' instructions.
I mean, I can maybe you can say, well, what she's trying to say is he wasn't violent before he was like placed under arrest.
Yeah,
which I guess technically not true anyway. If he stole something, so it's just annoying that there are people that only have a snapshot, but rather than having the wisdom to just think, I've only seen this from one angle, maybe I need to they go, no, this is police brutality, 100%. You know, and it's no, you haven't. It's annoying and frustrating that people.
If he hadn't been squealing like a girl, I'm surprised the guy that was being arrested didn't start shouting, "I can't breathe."
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me.
Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, okay.
So that guy that we just saw with an Israeli flag, I believe, was the guy who owned the first Israeli flag that was stolen and then ripped up.
Right. Okay.
And now he's got his second replacement flag out of his bag or out of his pocket and putting it on his pole to replace the first stolen one.
Right. Okay, that makes sense. It's not who I thought it was then.
Okay.
I think it's a different person, but okay, interesting. Including the Christian, right? So the Christian in this video then is that guy with the Israeli flag.
So the first guy that we saw earlier, he's been handcuffed. He's been walked along the path. The police have put a line across the path to protect themselves from the mob. But whilst that's going on, the mob, the Christian guy, gets out his second Israeli flag, puts it on his flagpole, and then right in front of all these huge number of police that have now arrived, the mob then steal the second Israeli flag. So that happened just off of camera of that last bit of clip. And there was, but luckily, obviously, we had large police numbers there. So the police immediately managed to pounce on the two main culprits. So that one where you've frozen it is one of them. And the other one is wearing that very pale blue, almost like neon blue hoodie thing. So the police then managed to arrest those two further thieves.
Yeah, and well done for them for doing that, because you know there's a big temptation, I imagine, if you see someone like that, even though you've got a lot of police, let's say comrades, not comrades, you've got a lot of police officers with you, but I don't think you're necessarily going to make the call these days to pursue that, because there is like the thing in your mind where it's like, well, no, we're trying to deal with the crowd in general, so we can't split up. We've got to keep the line. I don't know.
I wonder whether this action, because again, nothing happens without without a reason, and often without senior instructions. I do wonder, because we've had months, well, it's well over a year now, worth of Palestinian protests across London, which have included an awful amount of anti-Semitism and an awful amount of vile stuff. From highly anti-Semitic placards and T-shirts. I think, and it's been going on and on and on, and it's always on Saturday, which is obviously the Jewish Sabbath. Even in the vicinity of synagogues, I think the Met Police have now got more aware of that issue. And I think, even in terms of the Palestinian marches, I think the police are a little bit more a little bit better now in terms of managing those. And I mean, they're still going on, which I think there's an argument that they shouldn't still be going on. But the police are much more aware and cautious around any signs of anti-Semitism. So I think that might be part of the reason why maybe they were very, very quick to jump in here. But I will say, and I actually tweeted this. I've been looking across all the Dawa channels, all the Dawa YouTube channels, of which we know there are many, because they were all there on Sunday. So I thought this, whoever you blame for what happened on Sunday, it was a major event for Speaker's Corner. You know, the arrests of a number of people, that number of police, the mob, everything that went on, theft. It was a major event. So I would therefore expected, these are all Dan Dawa channels that focus on Speaker's Corner. Normally you'd expect them to be covering it, wouldn't you? And I wonder whether they will. And surprise, surprise, they weren't at all. Except for one channel, and I forget which Dawa channel it was. They put up a very, very short video, well, a reasonably short video, and obviously it wasn't done in a particularly accurate light. And I think I forget what the title of the video was, but both the title of the video and pretty much all of the comments under the video that I read were basically critical of the police and basically saying, or what's happened to free speech? We thought this was the home of free speech. And by that, I think they mean, well, if we have true speech, true free speech, we can tear up any flag that we don't like. And basically all inferring that the whole police reaction was because an Israeli flag had been torn up. I think that's fairly clear. That's utter nonsense. All 3 arrests, I think it's fairly clear to see they were made for theft of property, for theft of someone else's property. Now, you know, there may be another criminal damage aspect to, and then damaging and destroying someone else's property. But that even if criminal damage applied, that would only apply to that first arrest, because these 2 don't think damaged anything. They just stole a flag or attempted to steal a flag, which is theft, which is a crime. So, you know, they're all jumping on, and obviously they always jump on these things, don't they, to try and twist and turn it and give it the perspective that they want to give. But these arrests were absolutely nothing to do with free speech whatsoever.
Yeah, I mean, free speech is one of the most abused ideas in the world. Like, you know, if you you can borrow free speech for a day and make it benefit you, and then abandon it the next day when it's inconvenient, and then take it up again. And, you know, this is what you see with Islam. Islam will be all about free speech when it's about defending the right to steal Israeli flags, apparently, or, you know, Indian flags. But they'll be against it when it comes to critiquing Muhammad. You know, that they'll borrow and change accordingly because the idea itself of free speech is just really very commonly abused, not just by Muslims, but lots of different groups.
Well, I mean, I think it's probably fairly safe to assume that if any Palestinian flags were stolen, or if any Palestinian flags were stolen at Speaker's Corner and then tore up, I think we'd probably have a slightly bigger riot on our hands.
Yes, and there wouldn't be things like, but what about the free speech, you know?
Exactly. And this, you know, it's the irony, it's the hypocrisy of this, isn't it? Which I always get very wound up by. You know, make your argument, but be consistent and don't be hypocritical about it. Any argument should be able to apply in any direction to any other group of people that you're making it for. So
yes, absolutely. Yeah, I very much agree with that. Let's carry on and see how this goes.
You can video just as well from back here.
Very good.
So did you see then? Did you see then? Even with lots of police and loads of police in the vicinity, he is still that one there was still trying to get away.
Yeah,
no compliance whatsoever.
Sometimes I think like it's like a little bait. They want to bait the police into overreacting. So they, you know, the police are obviously trying to get you to do something, and you just sort of play dumb and not do it. Like that guy just sort of like his movements become erratic, hoping that they do something more than they should.
And I think it's like you said earlier. It's like in group, out group. You know, he's clearly putting himself on the other side of the police and anyone else.
Yeah. So everyone watching is, you know, just hypercritical of the police. Doesn't matter what he does, you know.
But the woman there, the woman police officer there, she's Royal Parks Police. She's a pretty good police officer as well, in my opinion. Because she even said then, she didn't say, I think her words were, you can video standing a bit further back. So she's kind of accepting that there's stacks of people there holding their phones wanting to video it, but she just tells them to step back and video from a little bit further away so they can do their job, which a lot of police officers wouldn't be so decent in that situation.
Yeah, that's definitely true. Yeah. It's I think there's a guy behind the fence as well. Who just,
Yeah, there were a couple of guys. They obviously jumped over the fence. I'm not sure I've seen any footage that's from that side of the fence yet, because he's probably got some quite clear footage.
Oh, about the Dawa channels. Yeah, you're right. They spin narratives. They change the thumbnails to suit their agenda.
Yeah.
But in all honesty, I've come to see them more as just money making enterprises.
Absolutely. I think the the concept that they're there predominantly for Dawa, I think, is utter nonsense. That probably was the case a few years ago, but like you say, you can tell from the thumbnails, from the clickbait job video titles, it's all about the money now.
If you on a lot of the videos, you look at the comments and it's Muslims complaining, saying, "Look, this is just clickbait. It doesn't accurately represent what goes on in the video." And also, a lot of time they're saying, "Look, why?" Because there's a lot of Islamic controversies, whether or not it's permissible to use philosophy when you talk to non-believers, this sort of thing. And they record it and they put it online of someone using philosophy, and then they'll record someone saying, "Don't use philosophy," and they'll put them together. And even the people on the video will say, "Look, what are you doing? Like, you're meant to be giving dawah, but you're not consistent in what you're doing. You're just putting up whatever you think will get views, and hence will give you money." So yeah, I'm convinced as well. They, for a lot of these guys, and to be honest with you, it actually helps me sort of see them. Like, I just see them as people that are just having a living. I mean, they're not any friends of mine, and they probably don't have the best opinions of me, but yeah, they've got to make a living somehow. So they just.
But on that though, I think okay, they're making a living, but be honest about that. Don't try and make out it's something that it's not. I agree. Making a living from it, and there's so many people have got YouTube channels, and they're doing it to get monetized and to get super chats or whatever else. That's all fine, but don't make out you're some theologically superior person that's just there for the purpose of the religion.
Yeah, true. They're recording and they're putting things online, and they're doing it for other reasons than what they're making it appear to be. I don't know. To me, I get a little bit of like, okay, they're hypocritical. They're not being honest, but I don't know. To me, it seems a bit more practical. That I can understand it a little bit better. I can say,
okay.
See what you're doing.
That'd be the Christian in you, Chris.
Maybe it is. Yeah. I'm being too sympathetic to them, but to me, he looked like he intentionally just threw himself on the floor there. Just
I wonder whether he was still. I don't know if he was cuffed yet. Possibly not. I think he was still trying to get away. He was trying to move away in that direction.
Yeah, maybe that then.
He just tumbled to the floor.
He's obviously trying to get out and move somewhere.
I mean, I have to say, all three of the arrests and many of the mob around were not people I recognised at all. So
I've been trying to sort of identify people in the crowd as well.
There were people in the crowd, some people in the crowd that were shouting and stuff, who definitely are regulars. But a lot of them definitely were not, and including the three that were arrested. So who knows whether they were just visiting or they were there for a reason, or who knows.
I've long wished the Dawa guys, or just the Islamic, there isn't really an Islamic community of Speaker's Corner, but Muslims there who have been there for a long time, I wish they did a better job at explaining to young people, young Muslim lads, look, don't come here if all you're going to do is you're going to kick off, you're going to yell racial abuse at people. The amount of racial stuff you can hear.
Particularly tell me about it. It's vile, and it does seem to have got worse. I think probably not unconnected to the fact that we have quite a few Indian Christians now at the corner.
Yes, there are quite a few.
Indian Christians that are very vocal. But the racism that those Indian Christians that are exposed to at Speaker's Corner, it's absolutely disgusting. And I often pick Muslims up for it, because they have, it's not even it's not even subtle racism. It's real explicit, vile racism, and lots about, you know, about cows and and all sorts of nonsense that is virulently racist.
I had to learn some terms in I don't know, I guess Urdu or some language,
Right.
because it was being said over and over and over again towards Christian Indian people from with Indian heritage, and I had to figure out what does this word mean, and they explained to me it's a really derogative, offensive term, and they're just standing there, just yelling it at them over and over and over again, and I'm just thinking, wow, it's terrible. I wish more was done about that, but.
And which, again, talking about hypocrisy, some of those people are so quick to call anyone who's criticizing them as individuals or their religion or their specific interpretation of their religion racist. You know, they're the quickest to play the race card when it comes to criticizing Islam or them or any aspect of their faith. Yet when some of them are so virulently, vilely racist, it's really, do you really think we're ever going to listen to you saying that anyone else is racist if you think that sort of behavior is? And so many of them do it, unfortunately. Not all of them, obviously, but many of them do, including some real regulars there who think nothing of what, you know, putting on a strong Indian accent, wobbling their head and saying something about cow worship.
Oh, that reminds me. I'm not sure if you're familiar. Do you know Sabor?
Yes.
He's one of the Dawa guys. He kind of like debates atheists, I think, more than he debates Christians. But I'm not sure if you keep in touch with the debate hemisphere. But he was supposed to debate an atheist, I believe he's an atheist, on evolution.
Right.
And I can't remember the guy's name. I'll have to.
That's Sabor's favorite subject, isn't it? Evolution.
Yeah, evolution. Yeah, and he. So apparently, Sabor made a real weird racial comment.
Really?
About the guy he was debating, and it was an Indian like slur, like a derogative term.
Really?
And the guy actually called him out on it, and he made a video response where he said, "Look, this term is incredibly offensive. Yes. Why on earth did you feel the need to do this in a debate?" And I think he was playing on the fact that the crowd wouldn't understand what he's saying, because the crowd is predominantly American.
Sabor is of Indian or Pakistani, you know, that area heritage. You know, that is quite shocking, because I would have thought Sabor wouldn't have stooped so low, but clearly
I wouldn't have thought so either. Although, to be fair, I don't know much about Sabor. I haven't really had the pleasure of speaking with him, but yeah, strange.
Interesting. Anyway.
He was not him, right? He was doing nothing. You are nothing. Back off. Disabled people here. Move out the area for us. Leave the area completely. Move out the area. Keep moving. Move out the area completely. Get out. Leave. Completely leave. Yes, keep going. Keep going. Leave. Completely. Turn around and leave. Yeah, but turn around and walk off. Yeah, quite simple. Turn around. Yeah, he doesn't want to. He doesn't want to. Leave him. Read the whole thing. Please. You can run away.
Love it. May God bless you and keep you safe.
Sorry. I haven't seen that before.
What was said then? I missed it.
She went up to the police officer. She said, "May God bless you and keep you safe." And he just turns and says, "Thank you."
Excellent. So polite.
Yeah. Actually, there was a police officer I saw a few months back when I last came, and he was really polite. And he I know it sounds weird, but he said just like a nice comment in passing, and I thought, that's so good. Like a lot of the police officers I tend to see there are very sort of standoffish. They're just at the side.
Yes,
I've tried speaking with them on some occasions, as politely as I can be, and they honestly look like, like a bee has just stung them, and they're really not happy. And I'm like, all right, then, leave you alone. But I do like when there's civility,
Yes,
warms my heart a bit.
Yeah. First time we're seeing this. Thank God for that. First time we're seeing this. Thank
Pray for
God.
all the police here. Pray their protection over their lives.
They're just getting too violent. Why? Stanford. Read the whole thing. My camera is read the whole thing. Read the whole thing. Why did God tell him to do that? And he won't tell you why.
Numbers 31, 17. Now, kill all the boys and kill every woman who has president.
Yeah, you can hear Christian and Muslim frequent attendees of Speaker's Corner debating right by the.
Yeah.
That's kind of funny.
But say for yourself, every man
So shall I just say and comment about the Christian? I think when the two in that latter attempted robbery, theft, whatever you describe it as, the Christian guy from whom they were stealing the flag responded and I think tried to grab one of them at the point that the police pounced. And I guess at that precise moment as the police pounced, they didn't precisely know what had happened or who was involved, because it looked like two men fighting at that point, but it was basically the victim trying to hold the thief. But clearly the police very rapidly realized that, because the Christian guy wasn't arrested and he was let go and they took a statement from him, etc., etc. And in fact, I will divulge, and I think I did see this is visible on one video. After the police had pounced, the Israeli flag was just lying on the floor. And I picked it up and put it in my pocket. I thought if it stays there, that's going to be taken by some other thugs and they're going to rip it up and have fun with it. And I thought, I'm not going to allow that. So I discreetly picked it up and put it in my pocket. And then I don't know how much later it was, 20 minutes later, when the Christian guy was kind of left there and all fine, I just went and returned it to him. And he was incredibly grateful to have it returned.
You probably prevented a riot there,
Wow. Well, yeah, I guess so, because we'd already had kind of the two incidents, the first one, then the second one. So yeah, if they got hold of that flag, yeah, it could have definitely proceeded to yet another one.
So I don't think I saw it in this video. Oh no, we did, yeah. Okay, it was this bit I just wanted to make sure we covered, which was the guy actually spitting on it and trampling on it and ripping it up. Which you can see.
And I don't know. And obviously the Dawa channel, the one Dawa channel that did include a clip was like alluding that all this is inconsistent and not applying free speech. I am genuinely not. I don't know if the pure burning or tearing up or spitting on of a flag is illegal in this country. I think probably in itself purely it's not, because if you remember back yonder, Islamists, and I think even Anjem Chowdhury's group at some point burnt British flags. And I think in this country, burning a British flag in itself is not illegal. Whereas I think in a lot of other countries, burning and damaging the national flag is a crime. But I don't believe it is here. But I guess what's different in these scenarios is it was clear theft, and that absolutely is a crime and would be a crime anywhere. That's the main one. But maybe that spitting on the Israeli flag by Palestinian supporters, maybe that could also be considered a crime. I'm not so certain myself whether it would be.
Well, I'm just wondering if it qualifies as a hate crime. I'm just wondering if you can phrase and think of it in that way. I'm not sure. I'm also not sure. I think you can damage flags, as long as you own them and it's your property.
Well, that's the thing. Yeah, if it's your own property, if someone goes and buys a British Union Jack and goes and burns their own flag, then yeah, it's not an offence.
Well, how long until that changes though? Because there have been demonstrations of people ripping up the Quran. Hatun has the Quran with the holes in.
Well, a guy was. Where was it? It was somewhere up north a little while ago. A guy, I think was he a Swedish guy or a Norwegian guy, certainly from some Scandinavian country, who burnt a Quran in Britain, who was arrested and has been charged. And I think he might have even been sentenced in prison for burning a Quran.
Well, it was, maybe it was his own Quran, right?
If burning a Quran has become potentially a criminal act, then why shouldn't spitting and damaging a Israeli flag? Yeah. Israel being the only Jewish state in the entire world.
Yeah, it's difficult to make that kind of separation of it because I know I've heard a lot of people say there's anti-Semitism and then there's anti-Zionism and the two different things.
Yeah,
but I don't know. It's hard to distinguish that in every instance. I think there are a lot of people that say it's just anti-Zionism and it isn't.
But
yeah.
So I was just going to maybe sum up and say, so the crimes that appear to have happened are theft at Speaker's Corner on Sunday. We know that crime has been committed numerous times before. We've had a lot of flag stealing and book stealing, actually. So where Christians have been holding a Quran. I think that happened to Hatun, but it's happened to other people as well. So we know there's been numerous instances where people's property has been stolen at Speaker's Corner before that hasn't resulted in any arrests or any police action whatsoever. This time it did, but only through the fortuitous chance that there were police present.
Oh, did you?
Where it did get dealt with.
Did you? When Hatun had a Quran and it was stolen from her at Speaker's Corner, did you see the video where I think it's Uncle Omar? Pretty sure you're familiar with
had her stolen Quran.
Yes, yeah. I think the police actually gave it to him or gave it to someone who then gave it to him. Or basically, the police returned it to some Muslims. And yeah, I have no idea how on earth that happened, but there was a video.
But surely the police wouldn't have returned it. They weren't returning it. It wasn't theirs to start with. But surely the police wouldn't have given it to the Muslims knowing it was Hatun or anyone else's property. Surely not.
Well,
not knowingly.
Well, in a sane world, yeah. But I think in this world, I think there's such a strong this is very much upset the Islamic community. This is clearly an extreme, hateful thing to do, to have a Quran with holes in it. The best thing to do would be give it back to the Muslims as a sign of goodwill. Seriously, I think that's such a powerful incentive now for many people. I like to put myself in their position as I would be inclined to that in some way because it's a powerful, very common thing that we have in this society now.
I'm sure that would never stand up in any court of law, though.
I don't think
around theft, etc., etc. You can't. If I go and buy a Vietnamese flag and do something nasty to it, police wouldn't possibly take that Vietnamese flag from me and return it to the Vietnamese as their property. It's not their property, it's my property.
True.
But the world we live in has gone mad, has it not?
Yes, absolutely has. It's not the world I grew up in. It's changed. Well, I know I'm in my 30s,
young
some of that.
snipper of a man.
Yeah. So got much to experience yet, but hey, let's hope the world gets better. Right. Oh, it's been coming to an hour and a half now.
Wow. Doesn't time fly when you're having fun?
Doesn't time fly? Yeah. It's been great to have you on.
Yeah,
I'll do
pleasure
some
to be here.
editing
Enjoyed it.